welcome back, bienvenue, and all that jazz. It's time to talk about some books, probably make some bookternet enemies. Today I'm going to be talking about my thoughts, my feels on whether or not I thought that my journey through the FARSEER Trilogy by the Robin Hobb was worth it. So just general format for this video, I'll go briefly spoiler free about what is this trilogy, what's it's about, some kind of general non-spoiler thoughts, and then I have so many feelings I'm going to need to dive into spoilers, but I will make it very clear when I get to the spoilery section because I have thoughts and I need to get them out, and I hope that we can all keep it nice and cordial down in them comments and have some discourse with our dissenting opinions, because there are some things I liked, some things I didn't like, but we'll get there. So first of all, FARSEER Trilogy, what is it? What is it about? So technically it's kind of pitched as the first standalone series within the Realm of the Elderlings. So the Realm of the Elderlings is this sprawling 16-book fantasy series that has many different series within it. It starts with the FARSEER Trilogy, then there's Live Ship Traders Trilogy, and then there is the Tawny Man Trilogy, and then there is the Rain Wild Quartet, and then it concludes with the Fitz and the Fool Trilogy. So every other trilogy follows the main character that we get first introduced to in FARSEER, and then those other two are kind of at other places in the world, and it kind of makes a cohesive picture. Basically, the gist is we follow Fitz Chivalry Farseer, who is the bastard child of Prince Chivalry Farseer, who is in line for the throne. And when Fitz is, I want to say 6, he gets brought back to Buckkeep, the kind of seat of the Kingdom of the Six Duchies, and he is found to be the illegitimate child of Chivalry, and so Chivalry abdicates the throne to make sure that there's no questions about the kind of, oh my god, why can't I remember the word? Whatever, whoever gets next in the kingdom when somebody dies, whatever that, oh my god, I can't think of it, and it's gonna drive me nuts. Whatever, whoever's next in line for the throne, he won't mess that up, because if he abdicates, then his illegitimate child doesn't need to be considered for taking the throne if he passes. What, you know what I'm talking about. And so we follow Fitz from the time that he's 6, and since he is this bastard child, he doesn't get a formal place at court, but he does start to become trained as the kind of royal assassin. And so from a young age, he starts to learn about poisons, but he's also kind of raised by the stable master Burrich, and so he knows a lot about animals. And so in this world, there are 2 main types of magic. There is the skill magic, which is kind of like magic telepathy, if you will. It's like person-to-person communication. Mostly, it does expand a little, and that's one of my gripes with the series, but I'll come back to that in the spoilery section. And then there is the wit magic, which is bonding with animals. And so the wit magic is seen as dirty or not good, and so Fitz can do both types of magic, and that feeds into his trauma, whatever. I'll come back to all of the spoiler things. Just reel it in. So basically we follow Fitz throughout his life from 6 years old until, I don't know, I think he's mid-20s by the end of Assassin's Quest. I don't really remember. Somewhere in there, in the 20 to 30-year-old range, and I feel like I've heard that by the end of the Fitz and the Fool trilogy, we follow Fitz up through the time that he's in his late 60s. And I would say that if you like, slow burn isn't even the right word, like glacial burn or snail-paced stories, that maybe you would like FARSEER. Or if you're really into that like slice of life style stuff, then following Fitz in his day-to-day, it is first-person perspective, and it feels kind of like fantasy adventure in The Sims. So you're literally following his meals every day, his conversations with people, his thoughts, his feelings, his emotions. So if you really want that, like, it wasn't immersive to me, but if you want to be immersed in the day-to-day and feel like you're following somebody and not skipping any beats in their individual perspective, then you will love the Fitz stuff. It does have political elements, but the political elements aren't quite as intricate as I would like, and I think some of the downfall of the series was me reading it kind of concurrently with A Song of Ice and Fire, which is a multi-POV, sprawling, multiple continent political fantasy, whereas this is much more of a contained thing. And since you are only following Fitz's perspective, if you don't love Fitz, it's rough. It's rough going. I would say that some positives are It has some really cool world building elements that I thought were really interesting. I think that there is potential in her character work. She makes realistic feeling characters, for better or worse. And I think that the main draw for me is kind of the cool world building and magical elements. The main drawback for me is if you are somebody like me who likes the exciting stuff to kind of happen and be there and for you to see it, that doesn't happen as much in this series. You are stuck only with Fitz, only in his perspective. So if there's cool things happening in other places in the world, you maybe hear about it later, but it happens off page for the most part. And so overall, please don't hate me. I will give detailed thoughts and reactions of why. But I think overall, the Farseer journey for me was about a 3-star, 3.5-star experience. There were many elements that I thought were cool or interesting, but they were kind of undermined by bigger issues that I felt in this story. And so it's one of those like 3 to 3.5 stars where there's some really good stuff and then some really not so good stuff. So we kind of meet in the middle. It's not like a meh experience. It definitely elicited feelings, again, for better or worse. And so hopefully if that entices you to try out Farseer, or if you want more details, please feel free to drop in those comments down below. But now I'm going to get into the spoiler-filled section because I have thoughts and I need to talk about them. And hopefully, if you love Farseer, you can at least see where I'm coming from, because I will not just be hating on these books, I promise. But I do have feelings. So let's just jump into it. Let's rip the Band-Aid off. Spoilers. This is spoilers for the full Farseer trilogy. So the thing that I found the most frustrating, I would say, is that I did not find the ending satisfying. So if I consider the Farseer trilogy as a standalone thing that is supposed to have a complete, conclusive arc in and of itself, then I don't know that Farseer gave that to me. It left many unanswered things, and the conclusion, if you will, was very quick. A lot of these kind of plot points that we'd been building for all 3 books were resolved in like a page and a half each, which really just like irked me. And I understand that Robin Hobb is much more about the journey than the destination, if you will, but I'd still like the destination to give me the catharsis to make the journey worth it. And so in particular, let's start with just the Regal plotline. So we'll start there and we'll go into Fitz at the end. So Regal's plotline, I struggled with him as the main big bad protagonist because I feel like there were sometimes, especially in Royal Assassin, that I was supposed to be surprised that Regal was the one kind of undermining things, and he was always the most obvious choice. He was like this home bully who was just kind of a spoiled brat who all of a sudden in Assassin's Quest is this maniacal mastermind who now knows how to leech energy off of people to the point where he can torture them from afar. And it's just, I didn't buy into that progression of kind of bratty bully. All of a sudden you're into this psychopathic torturer. I just didn't see the progression. So it didn't feel like a full complete arc to me. And then when we finally do get resolution with Mr. Regal, we have Fitz following the skill bond from, is it Will? Back to Regal, and then we're in Regal's mind for a moment, and we find out, oh, it's just because he's insecure and his mom has told him that he needs to be jealous and petty of the people around him. But we don't see anything about chivalry or shrewd or any of the people else that were in Regal's life being mean to Regal. So I get that your mom's whispering in your ear the evil snake on the tree, but that was it. There wasn't deep-seated, he wasn't abused by anybody that I could tell. There was really nothing there, just he was raised to be this petty, jealous person. And I'm okay, but then you go to real extremes for your petty jealousy, which maybe is realistic. I don't really know. I just didn't find it that compelling of an arc for this villain because I'm assuming that I'm supposed to relate to Regal or feel some sympathy for him, but I'm just you're just a petty little bitch and whatever. His resolution was literally Fitz skill imprinted on him to make him a better person. And so he went back and he was the best, nicest, most loyal person to the kingdom. And then he died off page from a giant rat or something. It was just such an unsatisfying arc to me. And if you wanted me to buy into the fact that he's a psycho, sadistic, manipulative torturer, then I needed to see it kind of starting earlier. So my best parallel would be to somebody like Joffrey from A Song of Ice and Fire. He was messed up from the jump. He would just be this sadistic, manipulative piece of trash, and it just escalated over time. Whereas with Regal, we kind of were just bullying, and now we're torturing. Like that jump, I did not agree. That's Regal. So then let's talk a little bit about Burrich and like Fitz's broader family, shall we? So Burrich was basically his adopted dad. And then we got introduced to this plot thread in Assassin's Quest that felt very Maury, very like Jerry Springer, where the episode is my adoptive son is dead and I'm sleeping with his baby mama. That's basically like what Burrich's plot arc was. And I get that the Molly Fitz relationship was not a great relationship. I really did not appreciate their dynamics in Royal Assassin, where Fitz was just like stalking the ever-living out of her until she gave in because she was saying no, 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 no. Everybody around him was telling him, leave Molly alone. And he just kept so persistent until that one time that he like climbed in her window and then they were in love. And I don't know, like the relationship was messy. I totally understand that. But from just trying to look at Burrich as this like mentor figure, you literally started sleeping with your dead son's baby mama. Like, that's just weird to me, and I know that the age gap isn't really severe. Like, it's not an age gap problem that I have. It's just that thought of your dead son's baby mama is now the love of your life. And then that whole scene where Fitz is, like, skilling to see them one last time to say goodbye to his daughter Nettle and Molly and Burrich or whatever to have his closure. They're about to go bang. And he just like leaves super awkwardly. We never really unpack it. And then that is just over. So we've been pining after Molly forever. Like Royal Assassin was the biggest snooty pine fest of Fitz just being obsessed with Molly. And now it's just like, oh, whatever. Like, it's fine. And then that gets me to the bigger problem with Fitz. Okay. So I understand that mental health kind of develops in different ways for different people. And so Fitz, I think, starting in Assassin's Apprentice, when he has that first witch bond with a dog and Burrich kills it, and then he's in the mind of a different dog that's trying to defend Burrich, and then he's in the mind of that dog when that dog dies. There's like a lot of trauma around the wit magic for our boy Fitz. I get that he has a little bit of something going on, maybe some depression, maybe we don't totally understand what's totally going on, but I'm just like, home slice, like, you have people around you who love you and support you. You have people that are training you to be everything you can be to help support your family. I get that maybe you feel like you don't have as much like individual choice, that you're not able to kind of go off and do whatever you want, but also like you have a pretty solid life, it feels like. And I know that the teacher, Galen, of the skill magic is kind of a dick, but like, I don't know, like it was just one of those things where it's like, okay, Fitz, it's not that bad, but also I get the depression. Sometimes you can't see that. Sometimes it just is a sucking black hole because brain chemistry is a cruel mistress. So I can accept all of that. But then we start getting into Assassin's Quest, and Fitz is just a miserable ass to like everybody around him. He turns into this alcoholic piece of that just gets drunk and says horrific things to people. And then we're kind of coming around from that of him coming back to being a person after his whole resurrection trope dealio, where he basically died in book 2 because Regal killed him, and he sent his spirit mind into Night Eyes, who I love Night Eyes. Night Eyes is the best part of these books. And then he comes back and he has to come back from being an animal, whatever. That's all fine. But then Fitz is just such an engineer of his own suffering. I feel like all of these interpersonal relationships that he wants and strives for and has issues with, it's like a lot of it is from his own making of just not being able to communicate, which again, brain chemistry is a cruel mistress. I get some of it. But then Fitz's resolution drove me up a friggin' wall. So we had spent Royal Assassin. We know that Verity went off to find the Elderlings, and I was really annoyed that I didn't get to see that journey. Then finally catch back up to Verity in this book and find out that he went off on a quest to find the Elderlings, and we find out that the Elderlings are dragons, which is a little bit on the nose. Like, I feel like we all assumed that the Elderlings were dragons. But the way the dragons are made is kind of cool. Like, you have to, like, carve them with your own hands, and while you're doing it, you basically put yourself into the dragon and become the dragon, which I thought was super cool. Then we find out that Verity doesn't have enough oomph to bring his dragon alive by himself. So then we cut to one of the people that Fitz has been kind of journeying with. It's been very clear that she knows more than she's letting on, and we find out now that the skill can also like extend your life, which, okay. And so she's really this secret, powerful skill wizard from a few generations back. And so she knows all about making these dragons and all that kind of stuff. And so we are able to just get her through her 200-year trauma of the fact that she killed her sister for sleeping with her man. And then she got kind of exiled and her magic was blocked. But the way that we freed her block from the magic was just like a very seemed quick conversation that, I mean, if she's been brooding on this for 240 years, you would think it would take more, but it was just like, no, look, your sister doesn't blame you. She's really here with you. And then her magic's back on. Like, okay. So I don't know. It just felt like every time we were building these stakes to be really dramatic and impactful, there was like some kind of convenient undermining by the magic where it was just like, oh no, actually the skill magic can do this other random thing. And then my biggest issue was this whole thing where I get that there is this underpinning theme of these cycles of violence with Rob and Hobb, where somebody has trauma in their past and then they're kind of a miserable shit to other people. And it's like, I get that. But then we spend so much time unpacking his feelings about Molly, his pining for Molly, him wanting to run away from Molly, him deciding that he's going to be selfish and kill Regal and not go help Verity, even though Verity is his king and Verity's about to die and he knows it. No, we need to be selfish and go kill Regal first. Like, ugh. But then we're finally there with Verity, and Verity and Kettle / Kestrel don't have enough oomph to bring the dragon awake. And so Verity and Fitz have a conversation about how he's going to basically take the emotions from Fitz because it's the last bit that they need to bring this dragon alive, and Fitz agrees. But then Verity goes one step further and does magical rape, takes over Fitz's body, swaps their bodies for the evening, and goes and bangs his wife to put an heir in her. And Fitz knows, he's walking by, he hears this happening, but then we never unpack it because, oh, Fitz's emotions were like magically just pulled out, so it's fine. Like, there's not a big issue. There is the quick thing where Fitz like scrubs his body off in the river and feels like unclean or whatever, but like, we don't unpack it. But we spent like 800 plus pages being obsessed with Molly, which like, that was him forcing himself on a woman that was like not in the right position. Like their relationship was not a good relationship. So we beat that to literal death, but then this like magical rape by his king is just whatever. And then there's the kind of cool stuff where the dragons are awoken and we fight Regal's armies in the local area. And then we go off to deal with the red ships, which has been the major conflict built up for all 3 books. These raiders that are coming in and decimating these villages and leaving these forged ones in their wake. But then the reasoning behind the forged ones being who they are is like in the interlude of the beginning of one of the chapters in the italicized section that's like a page long of like, oh, well, the dragons flew over, the raiders were raiding, so the previous king woke the elderlings and fought the raiders off, and the raiders got flown over so much by the dragons that they got forged by the soul-sucking dragons, and so now they want to make dragons and do it back to them. But this was all like 4 generations ago. So this is like hundreds of years in the past. And now we're doing this like crazy campaign to punish people that are hundreds of years. I don't know. Like it was very unsatisfying to me. And then again, this Red Raider threat is just dealt with in like a page and a half, kind of off page, because the dragons fly off with the Fool kind of leading them to help Verity, who is now a dragon, who flies Ketrican back to the kingdom because she's going to become queen with his now unborn daughter from his date rape of Fitz. Like, it's just weird. And then like the raiders are just gone. Like, oh, whatever, we just chase them off with the dragons. But again, it doesn't happen on page. It's like Fitz sees it in his weird skill dreams. And like, it was almost good. Like the last 35 or 40% of Assassin's Quest, I was like, ooh. And then we got to the thing with Verity and I was like, what in the actual just happened? Like, what is this? And just like, ugh, it like derailed it for me. And it brought it down so much because like, in that back half of Assassin's Quest, I was like, ooh, this is like 4.5 stars. Like, I'm really into this. I can see why people like this. This is cool. And then I was just like, what? And then it's just over. And I think that if I think of the Fitz saga as all 9 books as a whole, instead of this being an individual trilogy, maybe my complaints are less, because then it's just the 3rd book in a 9-book series and not the end of a trilogy. But thinking of this as the end of a conclusive story in and of itself, it is so unsatisfying. There's no catharsis. There's no like fist pumping moment of the evil guy Regal getting what's coming to him, it's just like, it just kind of fizzled. And so I think I find it more frustrating because I saw so much like, ooh, this is cool. And then I'd just be like, okay. And I know that a lot of people disagree with me, and I think a lot of that is because in hindsight, once you've completed this whole 16-book realm of the Elderlings journey, I feel like people in hindsight appreciate what was happening in Farseer more with the foreknowledge that comes in the later books. But there were so many opportunities for her to introduce like why the Red Raiders were doing what they were doing in a more organic way. Because we spend a lot of time in these kind of skill dreams that Fitz can't control, seeing the Red Raiders raiding the people of the Six Duchies, seeing Molly and Nettle and Burrich. Like, why couldn't we have flashed back on maybe Regal's dreams and like piggyback to see him as a child? Or it was just a lot of telling and not showing me. I didn't buy Regal's journey into madness, becoming this crazy, torturous despot. I didn't buy the Red Raiders having this generational trauma of we were wronged hundreds of years in the past, and so now we're gonna f these people over. And then I don't understand why Verity couldn't have just asked Fitz, because Fitz had a lot of things like, please leave Nettle alone. Do not take her to be the next heir for the line. Please don't do that. And so if Verity had said, well, I can swap bodies with you and I can try to get a child on Kettrikin and then we wouldn't need Nettle, I think Fitz would have said yes. So I don't understand the point of it being this traumatic experience that I'm hoping we unpack in Tawny Man, because it's like, that seems like trauma, but I don't know. Like, I think you can tell I'm very conflicted. There was some stuff that was cool, but like the cool stuff in retrospect makes the not cool stuff so much worse. And my God, if we had spent less time talking about every meal, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner on a daily basis, I don't need to know what he had every damn day. And so people that always pick on like my favorite series, Lord of the Rings, for being like overly descriptive, I'm like, did you read Robin Hood? But overall, I will still continue on and try live ship. And I'm so bad about DNFing things. I'll probably work my way through the realm of the Elderlings over the next year or two anyways, because I feel kind of like invested in it at this point that I put so much time. But please, if you've read all of the realm of the Elderlings, or if you've read live ship or at least Tawny Man, and you have like predictions based on my complaints in Farseer of whether or not you think that some of those things are kind of addressed or dealt with in a different way in the future series, please let me know in the comments down below. Hopefully we can have some kind of respectful discourse, because I totally appreciate that a lot of people love this series and it just missed the mark for me personally. But I think that's I'll reel it in, and that's all I'll say for today about Farseer. I do still look forward to trying live ship maybe in January, but if you have thoughts, feelings, things that you want to say in response to any of my thoughts on Farseer, I'd love to hear from you. If you just want to leave an emoji and you made it this far, maybe leave a wolf for Night Eyes, because he is the best. He is precious and I love him so much. But that will do it for today. Please like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't already for more bookish shenanigans like this from moi. Other than that, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye!